This is our demo for the college essay, and this is just a supplementary essay material, so it's only about 250 words. As you can see, it's a lot shorter, and I just want to walk through kind of the thought process about determining a good essay. But before we begin, I'm going to actually just read the whole thing, and you guys can follow along. Hope this is large enough, and we will go through this together. Okay. As a child, I was a Monopoly champion. After all, I did as I was taught. Use every tactic possible to bankrupt my opponents into surrender. Granted, Monopoly is a game whose ostensible purpose is to create and hold monopolies, but I have realized through my experiences in the Texas mathematical community that life is a bit more complex. A significant issue for mathematical competitions is asymmetric access to study resources. Schools do not share study materials so that they can preserve their competitive edge. This behavior carries serious implications, including student discouragement. After another school swept regionals when I was in 6th grade, many of my peers, seeing the shiny study booklets in the hands of the winning team, quit the activity. Asymmetrical access to resources turns the original goal of fostering interest in mathematics on its head by discouraging students, ultimately having toxic effects for the community. Since 9th grade, I have worked to combat this problem by co-founding the San Antonio Math Club, a nonprofit organization that works to provide equal access to resources by holding free monthly meetings where students from all over the state can gather together and discuss challenging problems. Don't get me wrong, I love to win, but I believe that some players can't begin with $8,000 while other players begin with $1,500. And through endeavors like the San Antonio Math Club, I strive to maintain the sustainability of the game so that everyone will play again without fear of bankruptcy. Because to me, equity matters. Okay, so I think this is a very straightforward supplementary essay, but it also is very colorful because it talks about this idea of Monopoly champion. It uses that as kind of the theme or general motif that runs throughout the short 250 word essay. The essay really is actually about the person's belief in what? It's his belief in equity, right? But he uses that belief to talk about, actually, he talks about that belief through both Monopoly and, by extension, math/math competition. As you can see, this is the kind of theme that will run in all the supplementary essays, actually in all essays. It's that you want to talk about your interest and through your interest show your characters and value. This person believes in equity. What does that show about this person in terms of their value? For example, this person believes in fairness, believes in competition that is fair, and maybe we'll find more as we go through the essay in detail. So let's just begin with the first sentence. As a child, I was a Monopoly champion. After all I did as I was taught. Use every tactic possible to bankrupt my opponent into surrender. This is a really interesting hook, right? I was a Monopoly champion. Seems like this really mundane, regular, ordinary game, but elevating it into a higher status. So in other words, this is something that I say all the time, to make the ordinary sacred. This is something that all the best essays have in common. It's the elevation of the ordinary, whether it's just an iPod, whether it's grandma's supper, and turn it into something that is very sacred and important and personal, because that is how we connect with people. It doesn't have to be like, I have to know what your grandma's soup tastes like. I have a grandma, and my grandma has a soup that I really like. So in that way, we all connect, right? But it requires you to get into the ordinary, get into your daily life, and pay attention to details, and see how that is something that is very important to you. So for the applicant here, as a child, I was a Monopoly champion. After all, I did as I was taught, use every tactic possible to bankrupt my opponents into surrender. Seems like a very aggressive kind of person, right? But this is supposed to be a not tinfoil, a straw man argument. Sets up this kind of contrasting image, which, as we'll see, he uses to take apart next, to highlight his true quality, which is fairness. Granted, Monopoly is a game whose ostensible purpose is to create and hold monopolies, but I have realized through my experience in the Texas mathematical community that life is a bit more complex. Really clever way to segue into life, right? To set up this contradiction or contrast between a game of Monopoly, which is just a board game, versus life. That life being more complex, right? This is the turning point, but I have realized a significant issue for mathematical competitions is asymmetric access to study resources. What you'll notice with this essay is that the author, the writer, is very quick to turn into the main idea because you only have 250 words, so you do not want to waste any time. So right out the gates, right, a significant issue for this thing that he cares about is asymmetric access to study resources. Very clear. My point. In the thing I care about is this, as you can see, right? Okay, next. Schools do not share study materials so that they can preserve their competitive edge. The author could have probably used a word like competitive advantage, which would make it even better. Why? Because it is a technical term in economics. It would probably highlight the very subtly economics. Oh my God, economics. Very subtly, right? That the person knows what he's talking about, has some degree of study or understanding of the laws of economics. So here, schools do not share study materials so that they can preserve their competitive edge. This behavior carries serious implications, including student discouragement. After another school swept regionals when I was in 6th grade, many of my peers, seeing the shiny booklets in the hands of the winning team, quit the activity. Asymmetrical access to resources turns the original goal of fostering interest in mathematics on its head by discouraging students, ultimately having toxic effects for the community. Very straightforward. There's not a lot of subtle nuances. It's just direct, right? You don't have the resources. You see that other schools are better than you. They have more shiny stuff, right? And therefore, his classmates quit the activity. And so this is just description. And he only really has one observation, which is this behavior carries serious implications, including student discouragement. And that's the only thing he focused on. I don't know if this is a good thing. Maybe he could have included another observation, but this is what we have and what we're working with. So this part then is the so what, right? So what is always, always necessary in your essays. You always want to answer that. Whatever you talk about, you want to think about, am I answering the so what, right? So his so what is asymmetrical access to resources turns the original goal of fostering interest in mathematics on its head by discouraging students, ultimately having toxic effects for the community. Okay, answered. Then, therefore, right? Since 9th grade, I have worked to combat this problem by co-founding the San Antonio Math Club, a nonprofit organization that works to provide equal access to resources by holding free monthly meetings where students from all over the state can get together and discuss challenging problems. A mouthful of the thing that he started, which is the San Antonio Math Club. It reads kind of vague to me, right? The thing that you do all over the state. Well, how many states have you worked with, right? How many students have you worked with? How many organizations? How long has it been? Okay, since ninth grade. But then co-founded. How many members do you have? Members, right? States. I think this person could get a lot more specific or into the details, because if this is something he cares about, these numbers should be familiar like the back of his hand. Okay. So, final conclusion paragraph. Don't get me wrong, I love to win. But I believe that some players can't begin with $8,000 while other players begin with $1,500. And through endeavors like the San Antonio Math Club, I strive to maintain the sustainability of the game so that everyone will play again without fear of bankruptcy. So this is a obvious callback to the earlier foreshadowing, right, of Monopoly, right? I love to win. It's a reminder of this. As a child, I was a Monopoly champion. I would do anything to make my opponents lose, right? This is a nice way to tie the essay together, beginning and end. You want to kind of harken back to something that you had mentioned earlier. So as readers, we are automatically signaled that we are coming to an end, and we are getting ready for kind of the big conclusion, the big so what, right? And he goes in to say that, yeah, this is what I believe, right? I believe is always a really interesting sentence because, well, phrase, because it sets the reader up to kind of the core value of the student. And whether or not you are able to deliver a strong I believe depends on how well you've written your story earlier, right? You can't just say anything you believe and have it be convincing unless you have evidence to substantiate that. And this is good reason, right? Because of his own personal example and experience. Okay, so I strive to maintain the sustainability of the game so that everyone will play again without fear of bankruptcy. Again, a wink or nod back at Monopoly. Nice way to close. Because to me, equity matters. This is, typically a mic drop moment. You'll see a lot of this in good essays. They kind of want to leave a bit of a ring or a lasting impression to the reader, especially when college admissions are reading tens of thousands of essays throughout the admission cycle. You want to have sentences that can leave a lasting impact. So, because to me equity matters, I think it's okay, right? It seems like it's a inevitable conclusion, right? But it's not that surprising. It's like, yeah, sure, I see it, right? So I don't know. I think it's like medium good at best, but not necessarily anything too special. So overall, this is just a very quick demo of the typical process that I go through with a lot of my students with college essay examples, looking at what they do right, what they do wrong, and how we can learn from their examples. Um, and I think that's it for the demo. Thank you for watching, and hopefully there's more coming in the future.